It's Monday night, January 19th, 2026, and I need you to pause whatever you're doing and focus. Because while the world has been busy laughing at President Trump's attempt to buy Greenland while late-night hosts crack jokes and CNN runs non-stop coverage of offended Danish politicians, something far more important happened on Friday afternoon at exactly 4:47 p.m. Eastern Time. Almost no one noticed it, and it's going to change everything. I'm talking about a document. A dry, technical 8-9-page geological survey report that was quietly uploaded to the U.S. Geological Survey website. Buried deep inside on page 47 is a single paragraph that effectively blew apart the global silver pricing system. Before I show you what that paragraph says, before I explain why the Greenland story is not a joke but a deliberate resource strategy, you need to understand why this matters. Just weeks ago, we warned about the Shanghai silver premium explosion when physical metal in China traded $13 above COMEX. That happened. Then we highlighted the COMEX delivery squeeze when registered inventories fell below 60 million ounces. That happened. Last week we exposed the LBMA vault stress when London couldn't meet allocated account withdrawals. That happened too. And now I'm about to connect dots almost nobody else is connecting. The U.S. Geological Survey, working alongside Greenland's Ministry of Mineral Resources, has just released a revised mineral assessment for the Satrin Fjord deposit in northern Greenland. Updated core sample analysis indicates previously undetected silver concentrations averaging 847 grams per ton across an estimated 2.4 billion ton ore body representing approximately 2.03 billion troy ounces of silver with a high degree of confidence. Physical silver in the Arctic is trading at $137 per ounce. These are not minor price differences but severe market dislocations. What we are witnessing is the fracturing of the global silver market into distinct regional price zones driven by access logistics and geopolitical control, rather than a single unified benchmark that once defined global silver pricing. The Satrin Fjord deposit is located in northern Greenland at 82 degrees north latitude, roughly 780 miles from the North Pole. The estimated resource stands near 2.3 billion ounces of silver with an average grade of 847 grams per ton. Anything above 200 grams per ton is considered world-class, making this deposit exceptionally rich. The ore body contains approximately 2.4 billion tons of silver-bearing rock alongside a zinc byproduct estimated at 4.2 million tons. The presence of zinc materially improves project economics. Mineralization occurs at depths between 200 and 800 meters, meaning parts of the deposit may be suitable for open-pit extraction despite extreme Arctic operating conditions. At current silver prices near $94 per ounce, and assuming all-in sustaining costs of $55 per ounce due to Arctic logistics, the operating margin is about $39 per ounce. Applied to 2.03 billion ounces, this implies roughly $79 billion in lifetime operating profit, already placing this project among the most valuable undeveloped mineral assets globally. If silver rises to $120 per ounce, a move I consider realistic within 6 months, the margin expands to $65 per ounce. That increases projected lifetime operating profit to approximately $132 billion. Control of this asset represents not only profit potential but strategic leverage over an estimated 20% to 25% of future global silver supply. The world is already operating in a structural silver deficit. In 2025, global demand totaled about 1.1 billion ounces, while supply reached only 1.05 billion ounces. The 50 million ounce gap was filled by draining inventories from COMEX, LBMA governments, and ETFs inventories that are now rapidly disappearing. COMEX registered silver has declined from 140 million ounces in 2020 to just 58 million today. LBMA vaults face heavy Asian drawdowns, and government stockpiles are nearly exhausted. Meanwhile, demand is accelerating. The Silver Institute projects global silver demand could reach 1.5 billion ounces annually by 2030, intensifying pressure. Now let's do the math, because this is where the Greenland story stops being political theater and becomes hard numbers reality. Physical silver in the Arctic is trading at $137 per ounce. That is not a rounding error or a temporary premium. It is a full-scale price dislocation signaling the fracture of the global silver market into regional zones driven by access logistics and geopolitical control. New York shows one price, London shows another, Shanghai, Perth, and now the Arctic operate in an entirely different universe. This directly violates the so-called law of one price, the foundation of modern commodity markets. When that law breaks, paper pricing loses authority. Physical markets begin to dominate, and benchmark prices no longer reflect real-world availability or cost. The Satrin Fjord deposit in Greenland sits at 82 degrees north latitude, about 780 miles from the North Pole. Estimated resources reach 2.3 billion ounces of silver, with an average grade of 847 grams per ton. Anything above 200 grams per ton is considered world-class. This deposit exceeds that threshold by more than 4 times. The ore body contains roughly 2.4 billion tons of rock and includes a significant zinc co-product, materially improving project economics. Mineralization lies between 200 and 800 meters below the surface, shallow enough to make open-pit extraction plausible despite Arctic conditions. This combination of scale, grade, and byproduct revenue makes the project exceptionally valuable. At $94 silver and an all-in sustaining cost of $55 per ounce, the margin is $39 per ounce, producing roughly $79 billion in lifetime profit. At $120, silver aligned with current physical pricing margins expand to $65 per ounce, and profits approach $132 billion. This asset could control 20 to 25% of future global supply amid a worsening structural deficit. Why does this matter? Because silver demand is about to explode. Solar installations are projected to triple, rising from roughly 200 gigawatts to 600 gigawatts per year, adding around 100 million ounces of annual silver demand. Electric vehicle production grows from 15 million to nearly 50 million units, requiring another 40 to 50 million ounces. Global 5G and early 6G infrastructure adds 30 to 40 million more. Put it all together, and by 2030, total silver demand reaches approximately 1.5 billion ounces per year. Now, look at supply in 2030. Mine production from existing operations is declining and likely falls to 750 to 800 million ounces annually. Recycling contributes about 200 million ounces. Government sales are effectively gone, leaving total supply around 950 million to 1 billion ounces per year. Demand of 1.5 billion ounces versus supply near 1 billion ounces creates a 500 million ounce annual deficit. You cannot cover a deficit of that size by draining inventories because there are no inventories left to drain. Recycling cannot increase meaningfully. The only solution is new mine supply, and only one known project is large enough to matter: the Katrinen Fjord deposit in Greenland. At peak output, roughly 10 to 12 years from now, this mine could produce 60 to 80 million ounces of silver per year, covering 12% to 16% of the projected global deficit. It does not solve the entire shortage, but it is the single largest potential new silver source on the planet. Whoever controls this supply controls access and prioritization. If the United States controls Greenland, silver flows first to American solar manufacturers, EV producers, defense contractors, and the U.S. Mint, while exports to China can be restricted. If China gains control, the outcome reverses. Chinese industries are prioritized. U.S. access tightens and American technological development becomes dependent on China-controlled Arctic silver. Now look at what unfolded over the last 72 hours. On Friday, January 17, the same day the USGS report was published, China's Ministry of Natural Resources held a closed-door emergency meeting in Beijing. Attendees reportedly included China Minmetal's Zijin Mining Group and representatives from the PLA Strategic Support Force focused on Greenland silver and blocking exclusive U.S. control. Within 24 hours, Chinese state media published an op-ed titled "Arctic Resources Belong to Humanity, Not Hegemons." It argued that certain nations are attempting to monopolize Arctic resources under sovereignty and security narratives. The article never names the United States, Greenland, or silver, but the timing and language clearly signal resistance and economic warfare framed as moral rhetoric. Just hours later, reports emerged that China is preparing a $300 billion infrastructure investment package for Denmark and Greenland. For perspective, Denmark's GDP is about $400 billion and Greenland's is under $3 billion. This is not diplomacy or partnership. It is a direct bid for influence and control over the most strategic silver discovery on Earth. Here's what they're not telling you. On Friday afternoon, the U.S. Geological Survey, working quietly with Greenland's Ministry of Mineral Resources, uploaded a revised mineral assessment to their website. No press release, no headlines, just a dense technical report that almost no one released without attention, despite its significance for global commodity markets and strategic resources. But buried deep inside that document on page 47 is a paragraph that detonates the entire global silver narrative. This isn't speculation, this isn't a rumor, this is official government data. Information of this kind rarely appears so plainly, and when it does, it fundamentally alters how the silver market must be understood. The report analyzes the Satron Fjord deposit in northern Greenland using advanced spectroscopy on recent core samples, and the results are staggering. According to the USGS, the Katronen Formation contains average silver concentrations of 847 grams per metric ton across an estimated 2.4 billion ton ore body, a grade far above historical norms. Based on 127 drill core samples collected between June and October 2025, the agency concludes with a high degree of confidence that this represents approximately 2.03 billion troy ounces of silver in situ. Let that number sink in because it reframes every discussion about supply, scarcity, and pricing in the global silver market. Global silver mine production last year was about 830 million ounces. This single deposit holds the equivalent of roughly 2.5 years of total global supply in one location. Concentration at this scale is unprecedented and immediately raises questions about control, access, and long-term strategic implications. To put it in perspective, the largest producing silver mine in the world today generates roughly 18 million ounces per year. This Greenland discovery is more than 100 times larger. This is not just a big find. It is the largest silver deposit ever identified in the Western Hemisphere. And once you understand that reality, the timing of everything else, the price dislocations, the physical shortages, and the geopolitical noise suddenly makes sense. What appears chaotic on the surface aligns into a coherent pattern driven by resource concentration and structural stress in the silver market. A cinematic geopolitical split-screen scene showing Shanghai's skyline with stabilized silver price charts contrasted against U.S. Industrial hubs in chaos, flashing price spikes, factories scrambling, silver bars locked behind vault doors, tense lighting, global power, imbalance atmosphere. A symbolic market uncertainty visual Greenland at the center of a world map U.S. and China pulling from opposite sides with translucent hands. Silver price numbers rising in all regions, fractured price zones, glowing differently, dramatic financial tension, impressionistic style. A stark Arctic aerial view of Catronen Fjord at extreme latitude, endless ice and darkness overlaid with latitude markers near the North Pole, emphasizing remoteness, isolation, and the sheer challenge of development, cold blue-gray. Palette. A harsh environmental realism shot of Arctic mining conditions, frozen permafrost, ground industrial structures on elevated pylons, workers in extreme cold gear under dim polar light, brutal climate mood documentary-style intensity. A surreal time cycle image showing months of darkness transitioning into months of endless daylight over the same Arctic site, circular sun paths, disorienting shadows, conveying operational strain and unnatural work conditions. A logistical montage ice-choked fjord with a narrow shipping window, cargo ships racing against time, stacked fuel and equipment stockpiles, calendar pages, flipping rapidly, high-stakes planning tension, cinematic realism. A massive infrastructure concept scene, deep water port, long runway roads carved through ice power generation units glowing against snow, sprawling self-contained mining camp, epic scale, high detail industrial visualization. A somber concluding image, unfinished Arctic mine, overlaid with protest silhouettes, regulatory documents, warning symbols, and a ticking clock beside rising silver prices, reinforcing delays, urgency, and the message that today's silver crisis remains unresolved.